right, let's continue our coverage now. We're getting reaction from across the country as well as from the Rock. I'm sure that I think Aldrin Sampear is standing by on the floor with more reaction to what the IEC said. More reaction from political parties, really, about how they feel as the vote counting continues. Aldrin?
Well, certainly that has been the case, but I want to take just a slight shift to give us a bit of insights with regards to this issue around the ink, around the VEC forms and so forth, just to get some sort of understanding where the ball may have been dropped, whether it is from the politician side or whether it is from the IEC side. We're speaking to the we're speaking to the chairperson of the information regulator, who's also the former chairperson of the IEC, Advocate Pensi Tlakula. Thank you so much, Advocate, for joining us this afternoon. Very important, the issue around the ink. Are we making unnecessary noise around it?
I don't think the noise is unnecessary, but the problem is elsewhere. The problem is with the provision of the law, which is Section 24A of the Electoral Act, that allows voters to vote at a station other than where they are registered. I think that's where the problem is. I remember a couple of years ago when this provision was introduced, I was still at the IEC. And at this point, because I'm no longer there, I can state that I was very much opposed to that provision, because I thought that even at that time that it had the potential of compromising the integrity of the election. At that time, things were better because people still had the green barcoded ID, which could be stamped. That was sort of, a measure that could be taken or that could prevent double voting. Now people have smart IDs. I have one. You can't stamp it. So I think what should happen after this election is for the IEC to look at 24A. And not only the IEC, because at the moment, the blame is put on the IEC. The IEC is actually implementing a provision in the law that has been adopted by Parliament. I think after this election, all the stakeholders, including Parliament, should sit down to say, sitting where we are, with people now having smart IDs, should we still have Section 24A in our law? The intentions of Section 24A are good. They also fit in with the general electoral system that we have, because frankly speaking, if you are in Gauteng, you can vote anywhere, if you are registered in Gauteng. But that makes planning very, very difficult for the IEC, because if you have a provision that allows people to vote anywhere, it's very difficult for the IEC to make provision for the number of people that will appear at a station other than where they are registered.
So this provision doesn't apply when it comes to the local government elections, hence you wouldn't have so many issues around that?
Yes, because the local government election is very contained. The law is very clear. You vote for a municipality, so you have to vote within that municipality. But this shortage of ballot papers, it's not the first time we've had that. I think in 2014 also we had that. And because people were chasing voting stations where there were no queues. So once you do that, the IEC has made provision for a certain number of voters that have registered at a particular voting station. They put a buffer, But if you don't know how many people are going to turn up at any point, it makes planning very difficult. So I sympathize with the IEC, but the politicians also have to look at 24A.
What was the argument from the politicians at the time when you raised this issue and you said that this is a problem, it could compromise the elections and it could compromise the credibility of the polls?
At that time, the issue was the electoral system that we have in the country for the national and provincial elections. They allow people, if you are registered in Gauteng, you can go and vote anywhere in Gauteng according to the electoral system. And where you go, if you go to a voting station in Gauteng, you'll get 2 ballot papers, one for the province and one for national, irrespective of where you registered for, as long as you are in the province. You only lose the provincial ballot if you vote outside the province where you registered. Well and good, but now we are beginning to see this provision affecting the integrity of the elections. And as I said at the beginning, What we had was the barcoded ID, which was sort of a safety net, a buffer for issues of double voting. With the smart ID, how are you going? People are talking. The zips are not online. They're not connected. They're not online.
Actually, let's speak about the zip because what voters thought was that the zip can also be used to track whether somebody has cast their ballot or not. But now we find out that actually that's not the case.
It doesn't. All that the zip does is to tell you. I mean, they scan your zip. It just tells you which number are you on the voters roll. That's all that it does. So if you're not registered at a particular voting station, you will go and then they'll tell you that you're not registered here. You're not on the voters roll here, but go in and fill in that form that that shows that you are not registered here. So that's why I'm saying that I think we need to go back to the drawing board. There are lots of things that we have done in the past that we had to look at. You'd recall that in the past we used to have floor crossing.
Yeah.
And we had that legislation, and at that time I was still at the commission, and we told the politicians that floor crossing is a problem, it has to go. And after it wreaked havoc, then the penny dropped, and the floor crossing provision was repealed. That time has come now for us to look at. In fact, I have to say it's not only Section 24A. Maybe Section 24A goes into the credibility of the election. But we are now in the digital age, in the digital era. I don't think the electoral laws as they were in the past contemplated the era that we are in. If you look at campaigning takes place in digital platforms. Issues of disinformation, issues of fake news. I know that the IEC put together some platform where people could report that. But if you look at the code of conduct at the moment, in terms of the electoral law, it has not taken into consideration the era that we are in. And it is not only in South Africa, it's throughout the world. I think the electoral laws are outdated. We need to go back to the drawing board and look at them. Issues of privacy. How it impacts on the election, the issues that people were complaining about, where political parties were contacting people on cell phones.
I actually want to ask you about that quickly. These political parties, including the ANC, the DA as well, they've been sending people SMSs. Have they broken the law?
You see, we have the Protection of Personal Information Act, which is not fully operational. So I think the political parties took advantage of that gap in the law. But what I have been saying is that the right to privacy is a right in the Constitution and is linked to the right to human dignity. If you take that human rights approach, you cannot do as you like with people's personal information.
Thank you so much, the chairperson of the Information Regulator as well as the former chairperson of the IEC, with regards to some of the loopholes that are there and how the IEC as well as the political parties and those who will be installed in the 6th Parliament must try and tighten the screws to ensure that they protect the integrity of the elections.